one of the things that helps me is to view time as a currency and to view it as like, if let's say we have $24 a day, I'm like, okay, I'm spending $1 on YouTube, or I'm spending $1 on myself, or I'm spending $1 whatever.
Yeah.
And then you realize that like, I look back on my life and I've spent thousands of dollars working out, and how much that can turn into more things. And
That's
so
good.
that's kind of the thing that helps me not waste time.
Welcome to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast. We have our special guest today. It is our 17-year-old son, Maddox Manning. Maddox David Manning.
Our sixth born child. Our
Yes.
sixth born child.
Yeah, and this month we're talking about
And by
screen-
far our best.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
It's great to be here with all this encouragement.
It's our favorite child.
Oh, for sure, definitely.
yeah,
The
I'll
fact
take
that he's
that.
doing a podcast with us makes him
Yeah.
our favorite.
We have officially said that on a podcast now. The kids have been wondering who the favorite kid is for so long, and
Well,
now they know.
We can just say,
Macy's not gonna
children,
like editing
you
this.
join the podcast, you'll be our favorite.
That's
too.
right.
We can have
It's-
many favorites.
Maybe temporary favorite. How about that?
That sounds great. I'll take that role.
Momentary.
We're talking about screens and we're talking about technology. So what
Yeah.
better place to put our 17-year-old to talk about
Yeah.
the technology? And Maddox, I've told you this for years. I think that we've sort of done you a disservice because we really have been pretty lax.
Yes.
When you say
Very lax.
compare
Would you
the-
feel like we quit parenting somewhere along the way?
No, I
And then
wouldn't
you
say
picked
that.
it up and picked it up with McCade and started parenting him.
I think I definitely value technology more of my value than of y'all's value. at any
Well,
time.
because compared to
Yes.
your friends, we have probably been on, if you had a spectrum and over here was really controlling and over here was really lax, we have been more on the lax
Definitely,
side.
definitely, in almost like every area as well. Because,
But we're only talking about technology.
okay.
We don't want an overall critique of our parenting.
I
Right
wouldn't
now.
say a critique, but like no curfew, not like a general curfew, not
Yeah.
like 2 a.m., but like a general of like I can kind of have as much time as I want. But there was also, y'all would push me to go out and do stuff. So I didn't have like unlimited time because y'all would have something to do. But we'd also have several conversations about technology and about like the role it should play and can play. And so it wasn't all like you can do whatever you want,
Right.
but it was definitely
Right.
not helicopter parent at
Yeah.
all, not
The,
even
the
close.
opposite, we were something like below the surface.
But what I love about it, and that you need to understand, parents, is that while we didn't parent him and we didn't come down hard on a bunch of rules and perimeters and boundaries and stuff for him, we also knew him. We knew that who you are, you were going to create those own boundaries and those perimeters. And if you had not, then we would have stepped in. We would have said, unacceptable, you can't do this, you can't look at that, you can't go there.
Yeah, when we talk about rules, we talk about like, having him bring his phone down at night or, having certain limits on screen time and things like that. Those are things we really haven't done a lot of. But so let's talk about that for a minute, because I know parents are worried, am I controlling too much? Should I not? Or what happens? I'm so scared if I let it happen,
Well, and we hear from parents all the time, how many hours should my kids be on a screen and what should they have access to and what shouldn't they? And so you parents are looking for help on what those parameters are. And what's cool is that Maddox is going to share some of those that he actually put on himself.
But just answer the question though first of what do you the impact of not having, you just said we had a lot of discussions about technology
Right.
and the impact of technology. We've had numerous discussions on social media and why we do social media and what's good and what's bad about it. And, oh, here's a new app. Here's TikTok. What's
Yeah.
this? And what do we do? We've had numerous discussions relationally about that. So with that approach, lots of discussions, but not a lot of parameters. What
Yeah.
would you say have been the advantages and disadvantages of that approach to parenting you in that way with technology?
Yeah, so with like having a lot of freedom, I don't know what it would be like to have a controlled situation, and so I really can't fully understand the other side. But I will say that one of the advantages of having the freedom is that I got to have my own journey, and so I got to deal with my own like habits and get to know actually a lot about myself, about how like I'm naturally apathetic. That's really helpful for me to know. that my first bin whenever anything hard happens is that I go to apathy. And so it's really good for me to know and learn. But I mean, I started realizing that about myself freshman year, but I started learning and dealing with that like in middle school. And so I think there's a lot of benefits to freedom, and there's a lot of actually really, really cool things that come with that of like I can own that. I can own that I know that, or I can know that even God revealed it to me because I wrestled with it and dealt with it. But that's the big thing with freedom, is that like I was wrestling. That's the most important thing of like with me wrestling. I knew that I think that y'all gave me freedom because I was wrestling with it, and was trying
which means that sometimes when you wrestle you fail.
Right.
And
exactly.
so do you feel like that, do you feel like you have wounds created by those failures that are impacting you today, or was it overall, was it more beneficial to be able to wrestle with that?
Absolutely. I believe that whenever I'm wrestling, I'm closest to the Lord. And so like realizing that and learning how to fight with the Lord, like I think there's still some things that I'm dealing with now, but they are like so much more conquered and dealt with and fought through. And so like those habits and things that I'm building, it's crazy how it probably took like 5 or 6 years to build them, but it took like months to break them down. And so it's just really cool how the Lord's moved.
So I want to ask, just in case our parents don't understand, what do you mean by wrestle? Mm-hmm. Like, give us an example of something that you...
I was going to ask that same question.
Oh, yes, high five. Just give us an example of what a wrestle is.
Yeah, so with me, mainly, it's my thought life. So I'm thinking all the time, every day, all day. That's what I do. And so whenever my thoughts are towards, I want to be playing video games, or I want to be on YouTube, or I want to watch a show, usually my mind is, okay, I want to escape. And like that's a thought I've had to build and I've had to wrestle with. I had to recognize that I want to escape. I don't want to be in the situation I'm in now. And so that's what wrestling looks like, is wrestling of not going to YouTube first. Maybe I go to something else. Maybe I go to YouTube later, but I'm going to play basketball first. Or I'm going to wrestle with that of
play the piano.
What I'm really going to do with my freedom, with my time. And that was one of the biggest revelations, was realizing it's not my time, and wrestling with the fact that it's not my time, and having to deal with the fact that it's not my time to do what I want all the time. And so
explain what you mean by it's not your time, because I think that there's parents out there that maybe haven't taught their children that or shown their children that, and there's for sure children that haven't had that revelation from the Lord yet. So whose time is it?
Right. Yeah. So I'm still kind of wrestling with that and dealing with that, but the kind of picture the kind of picture I got was like an hourglass, and like each grain of sand can be a day. It's like, what was the overall day used? What was the overall day spent towards? If it's towards the Lord, I think that the Lord loves that and he values that. If it's not towards that, I think he still loves it and he values it, but I think we have an opportunity to spend more of our grains of sand or days where it's just like is spent towards him. They're his. And so that's kind of the picture I got to make me realize it. But one of the things that helps me is to view time as a currency, and to view it as like, if let's say we have $24 a day, I'm like, okay, I'm spending $1 on YouTube, or I'm spending $1 on myself, or I'm spending $1 whatever. Yeah. And then you realize that, like, I look back on my life and I've spent thousands of dollars working out, and how much that can turn into more things. And that's kind of the thing that helps me not waste time.
That's so good. And so how much currency do you feel like that maybe your peers, people that are your age, maybe a little younger, are spending on technology?
I think what most statistics say is like 5 hours is the average.
Okay.
And that's okay, but that's about like waking hours. But I think it's more most times. I think it's significantly more most times.
What would you say to the parent, that's you guys, that what would you say to that parent that where the kid is not winning the struggle, and maybe they're having discussions? Have you seen it where, so we were talking about that we were on this side. Have you seen it where parents have been on the other side, more helping with maybe more rules and parameters that has worked for some of your friends? I mean,
or for you, like, what are the parameters that you put in place for even yourself that we could tell these parents that might, help them with their kids or resonate even with their teenagers?
Yeah, so I'll be completely honest. I tried playing the like screen time game, and I tried playing the like few hours here, few hours there, or I only get to do certain things at this time of the day, and that didn't work for me personally. And so I had to get off social media. I had to like take it off my phone and delete my accounts, just because I think that that's what's most beneficial for me. But I still am on YouTube. But my parameters I put is I don't take my computer upstairs and by myself. And so I'll be, as annoying as it is, because it's very, very annoying to watch something.
And the kitchen chairs are super uncomfortable.
It's bad. But
because we interrupt you all the time.
Guaranteed every single time.
Hey, Maddox, how's it going?
What
Hey,
video
are
are
you
you watching?
watching?
No.
I don't understand. Explain it to me.
Yes, explain all of YouTube to my 50-year-old parents every time.
that's a great show. Tell me about it. Yeah.
Exactly. And so what that usually causes me to do is not stay on YouTube for as long as I should, or I won't watch certain videos because I'm like, they would judge me so hard because of what I'm.
That is stupid. Why are you watching that?
And usually it is stupid, but and so that's just one of the parameters that's actually been really helpful that I've done in the last few months is that I just won't bring my computer upstairs. I still have my phone, but I don't have YouTube on my phone, and so it's like just knowing what I do. And going back to freedom, that's what I had to learn my cycles, and I had to learn what I did wrong and what I did right. And if y'all were to have a conversation with me any given time last year, whenever I was probably at my most wrestling with it, then I probably wouldn't share a lot of good things. But because I went through that and learned my cycle and learned my patterns and behavior, I can say now, and most anytime if y'all gave me a conversation about this, I'd love to talk about technology.
Right.
And
so I think for parents, I'd love to just kind of wrap up this section by just saying we chose as a family, and as we've seen technology and with Maddox, to say Maddox was going down a good path as a kid. And so we said, hey, let's let him wrestle himself with it. We're also doing it with our 15-year-old. Similar type things. We feel like there's good trust there, and trust doesn't mean they're perfect. Trust means they're going to fail, but also we want Maddox to have and I think it's been tough sometimes, but just if he does fail, to have an opportunity, a safe place to be able to talk through it and say, this is what I'm struggling with or not. And so that's been our choice, and we can see that he has wrestled with his own struggles and is winning.
Yeah.
And is developing habits. So rather than us developing parameters around him, we've tried to work with him to develop habits that have been good, which I don't know about you guys, but man, sometimes I try new things and they work well, and sometimes they don't. So I think it is going to be a little bit more, it's almost like easier for the parents, I think, and it makes them feel better to just control it.
Yeah.
But it also causes issues with the kids.
Yeah.
And so, go ahead.
Well, and I was just going to say the principle behind that freedom, if you will, and that's what we want to do. We want to give them freedom, and with that freedom comes responsibility. Is we just kept thinking of the future, that they're gonna go off to college at 18. We've sent them so far, 5 of them. They have left the house, and there's not a whole lot of a way you can control them at that point.
Right.
I mean, there might be some ways technology-wise from afar you can control them. I think there's something 360 where you can watch what they're doing and how fast they're driving, and there's a few things like that, but you can't really control them. And so for us, it was valuable to go ahead and have them wrestle while they're under our roof, and go ahead and have them fail while they're under our roof, and go ahead and say, okay, this is what it seems like you might need, a control mechanism on your phone that maybe prevents you from downloading whatever app you want. Or it seems like you might need a Covenant Eyes so that you don't have, naked women at your fingertips all the time or whatever. And so there was a few things that we did put in place there, but reality is we wanted you to figure it out because we didn't want you to have to figure it out when you were out from under our roof.
Yeah, and there's always ways to get around it.
And then there's that, right?
That's 100%. And so I remember coming to y'all with things. Like I remember being like, hey, can y'all put in this password? And to be completely honest, I could have left, and y'all wouldn't have known if I would have kept on that kept that password put in to where I could have the whole internet.
Don, do you know the password? I forgot it. I don't know the password. Did you put it somewhere? I don't know.
Exactly. And so there's just I think that that was whenever I saw the most progress, is whenever I came up with it, and I was like, hey,
it's good.
I want y'all to be a part of it, and I want y'all to put restrictions on me because I know I can't do it myself. And there's an important thing to that, of having accountability with whoever, but especially it's the coolest with your parents.
Oh, so, my goodness, I just want to make sure, parents, that you heard that that accountability is important. It's really amazing if it's the kid's idea and the kid comes to you. Now you can suggest it. What would you think about me you need to have accountability with a friend or somebody, but I'd like it to be me. But I think that's brilliant.
I mean, we had several conversations about it. Like, I don't think that it was ever like a no restrictions ever at all, but absolutely, we could totally, it was very easy to have a conversation about what restrictions,
Well, and I remember having a conversation with Michael just a few months ago, and I said, Michael, what have you done that's helped you? So, every kid's different. And what Michael said was accountability to another person. Yeah. That he can, when they messed up, as young men are wont to do with technology and whatever it is, pornography or images or whatever it is, or even things like you're saying, looking at YouTube too much, or you spend too much currency on this, and he said, man, confessing it to someone else and having a regular accountability where they could confess, somebody you trusted, was the best thing he did. It wasn't about filters. It wasn't about, but the filter was his buddy he had to go to and say,
tell him about it.
This is, and so as we transition, I'd like the parents to hear. So that was about, some things like our relational things and how we did that as parents. But as a teenager, we pictured like you've got a set of parents sitting in this room. What would you tell them about technology? What were some themes that you would think about that parents should know about the way a teenager, views technology?
Yeah, I think my perspective is weird because I dabbled in the world but didn't go all the way. Like, I never really had Snapchat or enjoyed Snapchat. That's a big one. That's a big part of it. And so I think what's huge is to recognize the different apps and to recognize the different ones of Instagram is completely different, and nobody uses Facebook. And so Instagram is different than TikTok and Snapchat or even Twitter. And so recognizing the differences, and I think it says a lot about your child which one they use. So a lot of my friends, it's very interesting.
Why don't you say that?
Yeah. All the parents are going, what? Wait a minute, my kid uses this. What does that mean?
Yeah.
His fortune is.
That means he's a 3 on a Indian.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. We really went.
Committed.
Back to you.
I think that different ones are used for different things, and so Snapchat is just way easier to communicate. And so if they're on Snapchat a lot, then they're communicating a lot, and recognize that they're communicating. If they're on YouTube
and Snapchat, just to back up a little bit, Snapchat, you just take a little picture of yourself, right, and then you just send that. Do you say something with it?
Yeah, you can. There's text options and there's video options. So yeah, there's all sorts of different text that you can do. It's much easier than text.
I just know that
sounded so old.
No, I know. I am really old, and I'm going to even sound older because I still don't understand it, even though McKade has explained it to me again and again. I just know that when I pick him up from school and we get in the car, he takes a picture of the top half of his head.
Yes.
And then he sends that to whoever is just sent him the top half of their head.
Sometimes that's just as much as you need. Sometimes that's
and it's just how they're staying connected.
To an extent. That's where Snapchat's the one I know the least about because I had it for a month and I just couldn't.
Because you didn't want to keep up with the people. Because you didn't want to. Because they have to. Because there's so many that you have to constantly. It's a constant pull, right, to your teenager to be sucked into that communication stream back and forth. You've got to keep up with that, and so it's a.
I mean, you can. Yeah, if that's how you want. If that's how it is, that's where habits happen. I don't think kids are thinking hey, this is pulling me in and I need to stay connected.
Right.
I think it's just a habit that's been built because it's quick and easy and convenient. And so Snapchat's one of those where they're just in connection, but where with something like Instagram, they're consuming content and they're looking at somebody else's life, or they're looking at just something interesting in general. But with going back to YouTube, they're just being influenced in all sorts of different ways. And that was the one for me, is that it was an ability to escape, but also to learn. And then TikTok kind of goes in that realm, but TikTok's the most dangerous in my opinion. I got TikTok for 2 months and I recognized the kind of patterns I was going in, and it is heavily addicting in terms of it's 1 minute videos, and so it's much harder to watch a 60-minute video with one concept, but with a bunch of different concepts that are happening, it's much easier to get attracted to or stay in or to go down rabbit holes of what is actually really, really good content, because everybody has a voice, and usually you want to hear other people's voices. And so it's actually really, really cool, and there's a cool aspect to it. But I mean, you'll hear people talk about there's just like a TikTok rabbit hole that you can go down over and over and over again, because you're just like constantly entertained. Always entertained.
A minute at a time.
Yeah, fully entertained. They have your full attention for a minute, and they can do whatever they want for a minute. I guess you can scroll off, but they still captured your attention in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
And so it's just...
And
it's
then
like,
you look up and it's been an hour. And you're like,
right,
oh my gosh.
Right, and you might be listening and be like, oh my gosh, what the heck? I can't have my kid be on TikTok. Like, that's not the answer. It's like TikTok is good. It can be used for a lot of cool things, even like information-wise or like connection points. And so it's not the worst thing in the entire world, but in my opinion, it's the worst part of all social media. I think is most exemplified in TikTok.
Yeah,
Because it sucks you in.
Yeah.
And one of the things you said, though, before we started this podcast, is that technology, though, and I think this is great for parents to recognize in their teenagers, technology is a tool.
Yeah.
And so just like with any tool, it can be misused, it can be used well. A tool is a great thing. If you've got, I never have the right tool to do jobs around the house. I never have the right thing I need. I always envy that the other guys who always had the right tool to do the job. Here's
the wrench instead of the screwdriver.
Yes, or it's power tools or whatever. But, you know, and I get frustrated by that. In the teenage world, and tools, technology is a tool they're using. How do we help, how do we see it like that so that the tool is beneficial and it's not detrimental?
Yeah, that's good. I think it's a great question. I don't really know, because I kind of just threw all my tools away. Let me just stick to texting. And so
But you wouldn't say that, because you've also used YouTube a lot. I mean, I've watched you be on YouTube a lot, you know, so I mean, you definitely use technology. It's just that you're not necessarily in a lot of the social media type stuff.
Right.
That's probably where you have, but I mean, you definitely are watching, you're on your computer quite a bit, I would say.
Yeah. Whenever I kind of like, with social media and the way it kind of works, I think one of the best ways to use it effectively is to recognize what it does. And so, like, if you have a hammer, you got to recognize what it does. It's different than a screwdriver. And so the YouTube, or actually almost all social medias, have an algorithm. I'm sure you've heard about it like 1,000 times over and how dangerous it is or whatever. But recognize that you can use it to your advantage. And so if you want to watch the cutest videos of puppies for all eternity, you can do that, because you just keep on pressing on puppy videos.
Right.
But so in that sense, it is a tool. It's going to recommend what you want. And so if you want good things, then you will, I think, get good things.
Right.
And so that's where it really is a tool for you to completely use, because you can use the algorithm to your advantage. And so what I did is I had a personal account that I've been using for several years, that at that point, once you've spent as much hours, I think, as I have, and several years of currency like we were talking about on YouTube, they really know you, and they really know what videos are going to work and what aren't. And so I created a new account that doesn't know me, that's getting to know me, that's getting to know what I want to actually know.
So if you had a bad stuff on that account because you made some mistakes, you could just create a new account, and that would be a way to reposition how that tool works.
Right, and you can completely create that as much as you want. And I think that be aware of what is being recommended to you. Be aware of what you're being shown, because it's what they think you want.
Well, and then just to add to that too, when it comes to Instagram and those things as well, as parents, and even I went through and did this. I cleaned out all the things. I got rid of, deleted all the people that had a negative influence. So I edited, if you will. And so you can do that with your kids too. You can sit down and say, okay, let me see your Instagram feed. And if you see a whole bunch of negative stuff, then it's a great opportunity to just talk to them and say, okay, do you see how this is negative? Do you see how when you read this you feel bad? Let's not follow them anymore. You know, let's not have them on our feed anymore. Let's have only things that are life-giving, encouraging, uplifting things. Let's use it as a tool that's going to build us up, not tear us down, not make us want to compare. And so that is a way, parents, for you to connect with your kids. Let them have the social media, because it is what their generation, it's what their generation uses, it's the tools they use, but it's also you have some influence on what's coming in. That's interesting.
What would you say that for the parents that are out there and they say, okay, I want to have conversations with my teenager, I want to loosen up a little bit, I want to try to work this type scenario. What do you say, not just with what we've done, but what about with what other parent-kid relationships you've seen done? How would you recommend a parent approach their teenager about technology?
Yeah, I think that the most important issue, I'll rephrase, if the first conversation you're having with them is about technology, I think you're doing it wrong. Maybe it's an open door, but I think it's more about Jesus, and it's more about your heart, it's more about where you are. I think that technology is a side effect of whatever's really going on, and use of it can be shown what's actually going on. And so I think that the first and foremost conversation would be to have fun with them and get to know them and be close to them in that kind of way, and then any circumstance you can kind of get a feel of how they are in this season. But if you want to talk more about technology, I would try to not completely understand it, like unless you do, like if y'all come and talk to me about YouTube, I have to explain a lot about it. At some points I'm like, this is just not worth it. I will just lie.
They are so dumb. They are so very dumb.
Just old, not dumb, old. But
out of touch.
But if you are, a lot of parents are involved in that, and a lot of parents are aware
and
of it.
way more hip than
Or
we are.
maybe they're younger.
Definitely younger, definitely.
Right.
So let's say, for example, I love this conversation because I think it's helpful to parents, is that let's say that they're concerned about what their teenager is doing, maybe on technology and other things, and there's maybe some trust broken down or whatever, and they're trying, but technology is one place they know that there's a problem. But you're right, they're concerned about their relationship with Jesus because what they're doing on technology is also reflective of maybe what they're doing in life. Mm-hmm. And so there's how would you say to you just said talk about Jesus? I mean, the kids you're seeing that are at that stage of life, what would be an effective way for that parent to talk to that teenager? So
I'll say that the first answer is I have no clue. I've never been in that.
I'm not a parent.
But
how would you talk to your friends? That's kind of what it would be. How would you encourage your friends?
Or have you seen where your friends have had their parents approach them in a way that was effective versus alienating them?
Yeah, I think a big thing is just like having fun with them and like enjoying to be around them and having that first.
So building that.
Yeah, that first
connection.
Relationship. Because like I'm the first person I meet, I'm not gonna have if I haven't seen them in weeks and really seen them and like really hang out with them, I'm not gonna be like, hey, how's your heart, man? Like how's it going? But I think it's a good thing to think about what you're doing and how you're showing it as a parent of like, I really think that we pick up more on what our parents are doing than I think parents think. And I think it's an entirely different conversation if you're talking to a high schooler, a middle schooler, or a lower schooler. Because I really don't know what lower school YouTube or lower school social media looks like. I'm not sure I don't know that realm, but I know middle school and high school very well. And I know that it's just very different, and because you're learning the world in middle school, you have an idea of the world in high school, and so it's much easier to influence somebody who's learning the world in middle school than it is who already thinks they know something about the world. Because with almost every form, especially in the kind of times we're in now, there is an ideology that goes along with most of the videos and most of the content that's going on, and so recognize that and be a part of that and hear them out and hear what they're understanding. I know that y'all have had conversations with me whenever I was in middle school, not knowing anything but thinking I knew everything. And y'all were so gracious enough to just be like, okay, he's wrong right now, but we're not going to blatantly say he's wrong with our facts and just like beat him over the head.
What makes you think that?
Exactly.
Help me understand what you're talking about.
Right. Because we're so uneducated.
Where did you get that information?
Right.
So really though, as we kind of land this plane a little bit, what I'm hearing from you is, parents, if you've got issues with technology with your teenager, first look at your connection with them and connect with them first. maybe don't just go into, oh my goodness, I'm terrified of what you're watching on YouTube. Go have fun with them, ask questions, see where your connection is, because we got to build a way into there. Otherwise, don't you think, Maddox, that teenager, middle school or high school, is just going to run and just going to try to hide, and oh my goodness, they can hide.
Yeah.
And isn't that true? I think I want to wrap up with that, because that's something that, even McCade has told us as well, is that if we want to hide, we can hide.
Yeah.
And isn't that the truth?
Yeah. And
there's the dark web. I didn't even know that was a thing. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Because Mom, there's so much you gotta know. Like, I know.
Yeah, I think it's about motivation, because like, let's say in a perfect world, or let's say you even do get control over it, what's the point in you having control over it and them just wanting to do it? What's the point of them saying like, oh, I can't look at this, but I wish I could? Like, that's not the goal. It's to just not look at it. The goal is the heart. The goal is the motivation to say, I don't want to. And so for me personally, it helped me a ton to realize that whenever I was like being involved in social media, that wasn't my life. Like, I was escaping and I wasn't living my life. And so once I started to live my life and like value my life, that's what helped me break out of the cycle in a huge way. And so that might not be for everybody. Might not be everybody's problem, but like, let them know that. Like, give them the opportunity to figure that out about themselves, because like, that has been the most significant thing almost in my whole life as well, is just to realize that, okay, I like to escape. What do I not like about my life? What am I not valuing about my life? And so there's just deeper issues than technology that are so cool to address, because then they can go to every area of our lives.
And apply to that.
Yeah.
I have some final thoughts. Do you have any final thoughts before I wrap us up?
Well, what I was just going to say is that I really love it that it's about the connection, and to use technology to connect, to use that. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad tool. It's not even bad itself. It's actually an incredible opportunity for you to know your child and get to know your child. I love it that Maddox said, depending on which app they use, says something about them. And so go find out which app they're using and why. Why do you like Snapchat so much? What is your favorite thing about that? How do you connect with that? I mean, educate yourself through them. Use it as a way to connect with them. Yeah. And so I love that. And then there was, you said one more thing about getting to know yourself. And so your kids might not, they're definitely learning about themselves right now. They're definitely trying to figure themselves out. They're looking for that identity and that security and all that stuff. And as parents, how we help them with that is we ask questions. Not the come at you questions, but the well, what do you think about this? And what do you know about this? And what do you like about this? Those type questions.
Yeah, and it's okay if they don't know the answer. Like, create
an
environment that they don't know the answer, because we're still figuring out. And like, I guarantee that question is not just going to go in one ear and out the other ear. With that connection point, I guarantee they're going to think about it more. Like, I know myself, and even most of my friends, they think throughout the day. They're not just like not going to listen at all whatsoever. It at least attaches to some part of their heart.
Yeah.
And so watch your tone of voice, watch your face, don't be accusing.
Yeah, we call those inquisitive questions instead of accusatory questions.
You're curious.
Yeah, and so I want to wrap up with that it is about the relationship. And I would say that as I have apologized to our boys especially, I've probably been too lax on you with your technology. I probably could have helped a little bit more with setting a little bit more parameters, maybe having some discussions. The reason I say that is because parents, we all feel like we've made mistakes with technology. And yet, the relationships are all good. We can overcome our mistakes. And it's never going to be perfect. So just keep trying. And I think overall the theme is, don't worry so much about control as worry about connection. I mean, and that's a theme of all our Crazy Cool Family stuff, but it applies with technology as well. And so thanks, Maddox, for coming on and sharing some insight with us.
It's fun.
Yes, and it's
good. Then we'll have you on next week and next week.
It is, and we are so glad you guys have joined us. Remember, parents, if you want to see more, we have this is going on a YouTube channel, as well as we have a podcast. So you can look us up on YouTube. You can look us up on the podcast. Maybe if you're on the YouTube, you can see the podcast, vice versa. But really, we would love for you to go to our membership site, Basecamp. And what we do there is it's think about Netflix for parenting. We can all our core course videos are on there, and we really it's just a playbook on how to be a parent of a godly family. Everything we've learned, we've tried to put into short videos and short courses that we can do. So it's at basecamp.crazycoolfamily.com. It's free, and you can join that. And that's where we love to direct parents. We love you to go to all of our different places, podcast, book, all the places. But really, Basecamp is where you will get a picture of how to be a godly parent. So thanks for being with us, and we will move on from here. Go be crazy, parents. crazycoolfamily.com.